Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, the 4th of July, 2023. You're back for yet another episode of the Tiger Town podcast. And yes, we are back, believe it or not, even though we're setting, what, third highest records on in the NRL era. But never mind that. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a special guest, Todd, back this evening, filling in for Toby. And to be perfectly honest, it's quite the upgrade, I must admit. Brothers or not, we all have heard Todd's expertise, and I can't wait to hook into it with him, despite what we're discussing tonight, mate. How's that for an intro? How are you?
Thank you very much, mate. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good to be here. So happy to fill in for Toby. He's having a few family things going on. So yeah, he'll be back next week for all those punters that are missing him and don't want to see my ugly mug on the screen. So yeah, all is good with me, mate. Obviously, once we get into the football side of things won't be as good. But I'm happy. I'm healthy. All is well.
Good to
Yeah,
hear. And might
yeah.
get a few more minutes than Nico Hines or Steph Utoikamanu off the bench, I think, tonight.
I think this is the thing. We'll get into obviously the Tigers game on the weekend, but we've got to touch on this New South Wales side for game three. And the last I spoke to you guys was before game one. We'd just beaten the Cowboys 66-18. We'd come off the bye round. We were looking forward to that game one side. We were very optimistic, and now where are we? I don't know.
We were chipper. We were flying.
Chipper.
Origin hadn't started. We'd just come off a flogging, delivering a flogging this time. You could hear it in our voice. We're excited. We were pumped. Yeah, it's a funny game, rugby league.
Absolutely. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit more of a dire episode than the last time I was on, but we'll have some fun anyway.
Sounds good to me. You still got me there?
Hello?
Just make sure to come back. Still got me there? All right, you got me?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, sorry, mate.
Just good. These classic internet issues. They keep continuing, but we'll keep marching on. Yes, mate. Well, I guess you mentioned Origin. Let's prolong the inevitable and put the bulk of the show, the Tigers section of the show, just to the back burner for a little bit and have a little bit of a chat about Freddie Fittler's third game selections for what is effectively a dead rubber, trying to avoid a whitewash. Obviously, 2-1 ain't great, but it's better than a whole lot better than 3-0. So the game still matters.
Absolutely.
Mate, there's a few selection changes, to put it mildly. What's jumped off the page to you? What do you think?
Look, overall, if you were to show me that starting 13, I wouldn't be too upset. The Bradman Best one, like, this is in no context, obviously, to what's happened in the series. The Bradman Best selection is one that kind of I don't get, but not that I don't get. He's a left side centre, has played that side his whole career. He is a good player. I can think of 5 or 6 centres that are currently available, not injured, that could take that spot, but he's opted with him. So we'll get past that. The 13 is solid in terms of what we're, what we've got to offer currently with injuries and whatnot. But that bench is just wow. The Bradman Best one was the wild card for me. Obviously a left centre, which is what we need. But I could think of 5 centres available for New South Wales that could be ahead of him, but for whatever reason, Freddie's opted for him. But regardless of that, the starting 13 for game 3, I don't mind. I love Cody Walker back. I also think it's a real, it just shows where New South Wales is at under Freddie, where this guy, who is the best number 6 in a New South Wales jersey, can't get picked until game 3 when the series is gone, dead and gone. And yeah, we go back to the 2021 series and we flogged them, we destroyed them, and it was fantastic. But when you actually think about it, Cody should have been the number 6. Like, he was the best number 6 we had to offer, but they went for this club combination thing, whatever. We won it. I shouldn't be complaining about it. But anyway, another person to be burnt by Freddie Ball, as I call it. And then we move on to the bench, which is a lot of good players that don't serve a purpose. And we've touched on it when we've spoken since the team was announced. I just don't get it. that's the biggest thing for me. So Isaiah Yeo coming off the bench, he's either your starting lock or he's not in the side at all.
I agree.
That's my yeah. And Cam Murray is a better lock for Origin and the speed of the ball we need. Isaiah Yeo is a fantastic player and has 2 premiership rings to prove it, potentially a third coming this year. But at Origin level, we want that speed of the play, the ball. We want those fast starts to our sets, and that's what you get out of Cam Murray. He's an elite lock, as is Isaiah Yeo, but we're not getting the best out of him at the moment. We should move on. Nope, we picked him. Jacob Saifidi. That's one that just blows my mind, as Stefano's been burnt now. 11 minutes in Freddie Ball. He's been dumped. The obvious replacement for the bench would be Spencer Leniu, who is now 19th man for some odd reason. And we've dumped Junior Paulo as well, who was named for the Eels today, I'm pretty sure. So he's been dumped for...
Oh, there you go. That's funny. I actually didn't even realise that. I had mentioned... Yeah, I had mentioned in our pod that he was one of my most disappointing ones. I think he had 4 runs for 40 metres or something along those sorts of lines in game 2. But I didn't expect to see him dropped. There you go. I didn't even realise. There you go.
Let me, I don't want to say he's dropped and then I'm looking at the team list and go, oh, wait, he's not even there, so he must be injured.
They name Haas or they didn't name Haas?
No, Haas never got named. So ankle injury from the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Haas he was our far and above the best performer in game 2, and he'll have a Blues jersey for the next however many years. He is an elite front rower. Junior Paulo dropped for Jacob Saifidi. Now, that's where, what are you getting out of Jacob Saifidi that you're not getting out of Junior Paulo? Like, I don't get it. And that's where the Spencer Leniu debate comes in, because if you want an elite bench player that, turn the momentum in that Melbourne game that Penrith played last week, he's the guy. And I thought, well, as much as I want to keep the Penrith connection low in this game, I also think he deserves a jersey in that front row more than anyone. Doesn't get picked. And then we've got Reece Robson, who I thought had a fantastic game in game 2 for what we had and based on what was thrown at him. So he should be there. But then we've got Clint Gutherson. He's in career best form. I agree with that. But my biggest problem with that bench is it doesn't serve a purpose. It's like throwing these good players in, great players with a couple of them, and going, best of luck. Yeah. Let's hope that. And this is where this whole Freddie Ball, Freddie Fittler and Brandy and what they've created is just... It's almost like they're taking the piss, like at the moment. What's your thoughts on all of that?
I mean, it's hard to disagree with a lot of what you said. From a Tigers perspective, I think it's very disappointing to see that happen to Steph, considering that Haas is out and Junior Paulo's out. So then you get Jake Turbo coming in.
Yep.
And obviously Regan Campbell-Gillard. I like Turbo being back there. I mean, I say Turbo, sorry, Gerbo, Jake Turbo. I like what he brings in the middle and that sort of stuff as well. I like the passion that he has. I think he's going to be a player that's going to actually use up his expiry date a little bit sooner than people think. You can only carry players like that for so long. He's going to provide nothing in attack. He doesn't. We know that. He's a defensive player. Occasionally he can hold up a line or he can be a link man, but he's basically Mr. Morale in the middle, which you've got to have.
Yep.
I like Campbell-Gillard. I think Campbell-Gillard's got to be a mainstay in the pack. He's got the right balance this year with aggression and his carries, and he's a good presence. But yeah, the Saifidi one, I mean, what's Saifidi going to get? 11 minutes himself? That's a like for like. You might as well keep Steph there, the bloke that you blooded in the game that mattered. I don't see any point in bringing Saifidi in, who is not playing better football than what Utoikamanu is at the moment. So it's another situation where someone's going to be burnt. You still got me there?
Yeah, absolutely. Still got you there. Yeah, no, I think we. Yeah.
Yeah, the Gutherson one, in some ways, I actually don't mind Gutherson getting picked. I don't know about him being 14, but New South Wales needs to go back to that scrapper mentality, where the 1% type players, Jake Turbo is one of those. And I see Gutherson as one of those. Dylan Edwards is another one. And so there's a few that are pushing for, if not that fullback spot, in the very least centre, of which Gutherson has played before. And, in New South Wales, we're big fans of playing fullbacks in the centre position. If you're going to pick Gutherson in the side, you pick him at centre and you don't pick Bradman Best. I mean, that's an absolutely embarrassing selection. And Brandy tried to, in 360 last night, tried to label Brent Reid as being disrespectful for asking the question, basically, as to, was Best picked just off one good performance. And he labelled Reid disrespectful for that. And the point is, Best isn't in the conversation. He's never been in the conversation. I could probably pick 10 centres that are ahead of him, and yeah, we've lost a couple down the pecking order. You've still got Staggs available. You've still got Burton available. You got Isaac Tungo from Penrith, who is far better in a better side, and the excuse that Freddie used today with Birdo was the fact that, the Bulldogs aren't going very well, so I think he needs to focus on them. That mentality of punishing players that play for poor sides simply because they're playing in a poor side makes no sense whatsoever. He just picked someone from Newcastle, and Newcastle had a ripper on the weekend. Newcastle have been going like bastards too. What are they? A couple of wins ahead of us? Like it's not like these guys are setting the competition alight. So yeah, look, there's some that I liked and some that I was like, what are you doing? So all I can hope for, as we've said a couple of times on the pod in the weeks prior, is that Freddie and Brandy go on their merry way. And thanks for 3 from 6 series. They did okay, but they should have done a lot better. Look, I'll still be watching the game, but I think the nature of Origin when it's 2-0 is a lot of the gas goes out of the room come game 3. So I don't think I'll be super invested, and I think there should be a bit of change coming our way next year. Hopefully, coaching staff and a few selections, and maybe a little bit of then continuity. I would have expected him. I agree with your point on Cody Walker. I think Cody should have been picked for game 2 personally. I would have had Cody and Mitchell Moses in there. But if you've got one eye on the future that they talk about out of one corner of their mouth, talking about the likes of Bradman Best, giving him a taste, Uto Kamana giving him a taste, then why are you picking a 33, 34-year-old 5'8" that's got a couple of years left in the league at best? So unless he's your linchpin, and, especially in game 3. But anyway, I digress. It is what it is, and it'll be good to see a few different combinations, but they got 4 training sessions to try to get it all going. So we'll see how it plays out.
Absolutely. Like the injuries were the biggest part of New South Wales preparation this year. Like when Latrell went down before game 1, the writing was kind of on the wall then. They've gone through, but again, we've got the cattle to back it up. We just don't have the coach to do it. And I said to someone, you forget that Freddie in 2009 got the Roosters a wooden spoon. Like the Roosters of all teams, he got him a wooden spoon. He has some really far out ideas. And this series, he's been out coached by Billy, and that sucks so much as New South Wales fans, because this is what we wanted, was to fucking smoke the Big Four. We wanted to, they killed us for 8 years straight. We couldn't get close to them because of how good a set of team they had, how tough they were, how they turned up for each other every week. Sweet.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've all said what we've said about the team selections and the coaching staff, and fingers crossed that things can make a change for next year, maybe.
That's it, man. And like, even though it is a dead rubber, I don't want to lose. I don't want to give them 3-0. So you hope that we can get it done. But the team and the coaching staff we deserve pretty much as fans that cop it a lot. A lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's probably...
One point I want to make is they fucking... I was going to say the constant Queensland get Origin, Queensland get this, Queensland get that. We get it. For me, the New South Wales fans, we've stuck through them through the 8 in a row. We've stuck through them through this bullshit. Like, I don't understand how that concept comes out. I get it that these selections and stuff and the way the team comes, you can say, well, New South Wales just don't get it. But like the fans, fuck, man, we suffer. Like we suffer so bad for this Origin period to the point where a lot of us, like, why do we even bother?
Oh, that sounds pretty reminiscent of the jumper I'm wearing, and well, cover that up. But the colours I'm wearing, 100%. That argument makes no sense. New South Wales doesn't get it. What it is it's a cheeky little slight on at the hearts of all New South Welshmen, and it's just punching down. You've been dominant for the last 20 years, Queensland, and you're going to make fun of the people that you've beaten. I don't understand, but I don't. What's it? How can I phrase it? I don't love my state or that jersey any less than any Queenslander. Every single person I knew grew up passionate as all buggery for the Blues. It might have been a regional thing. It might have been where we were, but I just think it's a bit out of line, and it's become a laughing, a sort of a long running joke or a bit of a meme now, which sucks because when people are making comments like that, it's questioning, I guess, the integrity of the passion of someone. You might question somebody's output, but you can't question how passionate somebody is about something based upon their output, and much less an entire fan base. But anyway, I don't want to get precious about something as silly as that, but yeah, it does irk me for sure.
Absolutely, and that's just my point. Is that it's a concept that I don't get because I'm like, we sat through 8 in a row. You guys threw your toys out of the cot because we were going to win 4 in a row.
Yeah,
and anyway,
short memories, don't they?
Absolutely.
Very short memories of Queenslanders. And their time will come. Let's not mention the fact that probably the 2 best players in the state have been out for the last 2 series consecutively in Turbo and Latrell. That makes life a little bit easier for you. We lost probably the best halfback in the country on par with DCE this year in Cleary. And, so injuries don't matter. And, losers are the ones that talk about their injuries walking, but that is what it is.
It is what it is, man.
Speaking of losers... How's that for a segue? The worst loss in the NRL era and the 3rd worst of all time, 74-0. West Tigers defeated by the Queensland Cowboys, North Queensland Cowboys. Up there in Townsville on Saturday. Mate, it's been dissected to the nth degree. Every man and their dog have had their say on it. In some ways, fortunately, the Canterbury Bankstown got shellacked by a far worse team in the Newcastle Knights the following day and took an iota of heat off us, to be honest. They've got what we would probably assume and safely say is a better roster themselves, and they got lapped almost as badly by a team who is far worse than what the Cowboys are running at the moment. So in some ways, it's probably not as bad as that. However, you can't ignore the cold, hard facts. And the cold, hard facts is that that is a historically bad performance. And we're talking decades upon decades, hundreds of years almost. We're probably going to talk about a fair few bits and pieces, mate. But how'd you sum up that game? What did you sort of make of it other than the obvious?
I think before the game kicked off, I knew we were in for it, that game. Cowboys were embarrassed at Leichhardt, not so much as 2 months ago, by what we put them through. And I knew that they would be up for that game. The Cowboys are a good side, and they started the year very slow, but they've been kicking the gear slowly. I never expected it to go the way that it did in terms of, I thought, a scoreline along the lines of, 40-something to 12 or something like that. Nothing like that. And I had to refresh myself. So I watched the highlights or the lowlights for us tonight just to, reinvigorate what happened. And it was just the biggest clusterfuck you could ever see. Like in terms of the defensive, effort that we had versus their attack was slick. It was on point. Every single pass went where it needed to be. Every player knew where they had to be. It was oh, it could not have gone any worse, really. It went as bad as it could have gone. And as you said, Canterbury took the sting off us the next day with their abysmal performance against Newcastle, who were on the verge of, the chat was if Newcastle lost that game, Adam O'Brien's out the door, they lose a coach. So that's a big, big thing. So they only had to win to keep him in the game. They just slaughtered them to the point where I'm cheering for them to just score 2 more converted tries to take the record off.
I think we all were. And actually, I saw that score at about the 70th minute, and I thought, 10 minutes, easy. They could get 3 or 4 here.
Yeah.
And I watched the last 10 minutes riding them home. But, it's a race to the bottom in that sense.
Yeah, and it's really the wind's out of our sails, to put it bluntly. We went from the Cowboys game where we towed them up. Everything was looking fantastic. We had that bye. We go into the Canberra game where we were very unlucky with the way that it ended. Didn't play great during the game, but showed a bit of spirit and got us home. And then since then, it's just been diabolical, really. The Titans game. So I haven't been on the pod since just before the Canberra game. The Titans game was awful. Just thinking about it makes me cringe. Melbourne was what we expected based on the people that were on the park. Like we couldn't compete with them, but that was just wow. It was in a bit of shock at some points about how bad it was.
Yeah.
So I don't know. How did you feel? Because I know you, and you'll sit there and watch every single minute of these games. Like where did the numbness come in? Like, how did you just go, what can we do?
Yeah, well, I was sort of sitting. We were out of town. We had a weekend away with a few friends and whatnot, and Toby was meant to come but had to stick around, and so we went from having to sit through that together out of town on a holiday away to having to sit through it by myself by the fire with everybody else in the house not being football fans. So I'll give myself a little bit of credit because there was probably just some laughing and head shaking at some points, and there was no real anything else other than that. I think it was just one of those games where, look, I'll go through a number of reasons in a minute as why I think there was such a turnaround from last time we played the Cowboys in particular, but it was one of those games where the opposition was tremendously in form. We were tremendously out of form. Momentum is captured early and it just doesn't let up. Every bounce of the ball goes at teams, and occasionally it happens. And because we have been, in the last 2-3 years, specifically, a perennially pretty awful side, we raise the chances of that happening against teams we play, I think. And we've come up against sides that are red hot, that haven't had balls bounce their way. They've had tries disallowed, or they've had a rough bounce or something, and it might have ended up 28-4 or something like that. Whereas this is just one of the ones where it caught fire. And hey, look, 6 weeks ago, we caught fire against them. And we did exactly the same thing. We're out of form. They were out of form. We were playing pretty good footy. A number of other variables, again, like I said, I'll talk about in a minute, but it was the opposite. And we scored 66 points on this same side, as you said. So it can happen in footy. For the most part, they were full strength. I think they almost were full strength. That actually had dropped Kyle Felt. And we're missing 3/4 of our spine. It sounds like I'm making excuses, but I think primarily it was momentum and luck, those things. I've got a little list, and I just putting a few thoughts down and picking up a few bits and pieces from what I've heard other people comment on. I've got 6 reasons why. And there's more too, but Appy being out. So not only is our best player and captain, but he leads the tempo in defence. Line speed, kick chase, he mops up the ineffective tackles in the middle. He facilitates more meters in attack. I'm underselling what he's doing there, but that's the gist of it. Brooks was out. So halfback, most experienced playmaker. On form, he's our best runner. He's our best kicker of the football. So he's our best attacking threat all year. He's a solid edge defender. And he's got the capacity on occasion to break or alter momentum, as he did in the Panthers game, which led to a victory with those 40-20s. Momentum, I mentioned it a few times. And the modern game is just a giant momentum machine, essentially. the best defensive sides can disrupt momentum. They can do it by um, providing pressure, adding pressure, or just suffocating teams. Scramble defense, umbrella style, that sort of stuff. It sounds lazy, but momentum can just get away from you in a game, and we've seen it 1,000 times before in different games this year, both involving our side and not involving our side. If you get the jump early, the points can just come. The Cows built momentum; they didn't slow it down. And even we several times this year have like rode momentum nearly to victories. Yeah, the Bulldogs game earlier in the year, 10 minutes nearly was enough for us to beat the side. Same with Canberra. We had about 10 or 12 minutes, and we nearly beat that side in 10 or 12 minutes. It's all momentum. Cows in the first game, same thing. I think the big one, or one of the big ones, is attitude. So both us and the Cows, they were, the attitudes were completely flipped from last time. They wanted revenge, and I reckon that we, with Brooks and Appy being out, with the fact that we've just, we've had a poor run now off the back of that last game that we played. I think the pre-game, the heads are just lower and they're just dropped. And as soon as you get stuff go against you, you become brittle. And then that's what happens. So attitude as well. You saw the start of the game. They approached the start of that game brilliantly. They then made a half break on the first play or the first set of six. And so they were there to go. But the problem is you become a glass cannon, I think, at that point. And if you lose those players who have the ability to change momentum in the game, then you're at the behest of whatever the other side is doing. And we saw that they were red hot with everything going their way. And so you got bugger all chance to do it. Wakeham isn't a momentum shifter. So two more. I'm getting there. I know this is a long one.
No.
Luck. I mentioned luck. Last time we got every bounce of the ball. This time we couldn't buy good fortune. Knock-ons out of Junior Tupou's hands straight into their hands for a certain try on the line. How often do teams knock on bombs and it doesn't lead to a try? Of course it led to a try this time. Like how many no-look Hail Mary passes did they throw over their head that just landed in the breadbasket of someone that happened to be running there? Could have gone to the left hand, could have gone to the ankle, could have gone over their head. That happened probably 3 or 4 times for tries. They threw several forward passes for tries that weren't picked up. Like, I'm not excusing anything. I'm just saying that when the luck's on your side, that might become 56-0. It's not much better, but it's a hell of a lot better than setting records if they pick up those. And like Jordan McLean's try, a grubber that bounced 90 degrees to the right and just happened to go into a prop's arms on the line. It was getting to the point where it started to become funny. Like I said before, when I was watching the game quietly by myself by the fire, I started laughing. It's some of the things that were happening. And it's sort of a fortune luck component, I guess, when you find the humour in it. The other thing was combinations, and that's a big one. Our edges have been absolutely decimated. I think I read, because I didn't count when I rewatched, that there was 9 tries down Nofaluma's side from memory. So if you have a look, like the second rower, half, centre, link is the most important in rugby league. It starts and stops tries, essentially. Short of like a crash play or a lucky dip bomb, just about every try or every worked play that goes through to create overlaps is going to come through edges. We've got Bateman that's now playing in the middle, who up until that point had been playing on the edge and had chocked up our edges. Yep. We miss Brooks, who these days and for quite a while now has been a really solid defender. He hits, he runs line speed, combinations are quite good. He has his shortcomings from time to time, but generally he's a pretty bloody good defender. Papali'i's been shifted sides as well. And we've had Blore come in, who's only been in for a handful of games as well. And these combinations, not to mention the fact our centres are different. Naden's just coming back, or had just come back. And then Toa had played 5'8", so he was one man in, and now he's back out. It was just shambolic. And if you're going to mix and match the most fundamental defensive combination, game upon game upon game, you got Buckley's chance, in my opinion, of defending a well-drilled side. And we saw it. We just bled points. And it wasn't through lack of trying, I don't think. So, look, that's just a quick little list of a few things that I think contributed to it. And I know it's not a short list. And I guess the point of going through those things is, one, to get a little bit of catharsis or a cathartic feeling to get some of those thoughts out, but also to try to strip away a little bit of the commentary around the fact that it is this issue, or it's Pascoe, or it's Hadjipantelis, or Sheens needs to go, or Benji and Scott Fulton are fighting, or blah, 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 whatever. These things are always multifaceted. They've always got a shitload of variables going on. And the bottom line is a shitty team missing 3/4 of their spine came up against a red hot side that had a shitload of luck.
Yeah.
And execution. I don't want to discount Cowboys and execution, sorry. And that's what manifested. I mean, it fucking sucks. But, and it doesn't paint us in a good light and all that sort of stuff, particularly moving forward. But, look, if we played that game again, it wouldn't have been 74-0.
No.
If we played this weekend, it wouldn't be 74-0. I don't think it would even be, within 3 or 4 tries of that at the very worst. For a fact that they would go out with a chance to try to redeem themselves, but it wouldn't be the case. So, yeah, look, they just caught lightning in a bottle that night and we copped it. And that has been the case, as I said earlier, for the last 2 or 3 years, where Melbourne did it to us, the Roosters did it to us, and now the Cowboys have done it to us. And you run that risk when you are a side that is really struggling. And I don't think it's a premonition for where we're headed. I mean, up until that point, we had only conceded more than 28 points once in the whole year. Which is incredible. When I read that stat, I thought, oh, shit, that's pretty good. That's pretty good for where we've been. And we're averaging something like 22 points a game or something prior defensively. We're up over 28 last year. There's a lot of improvements there. And I think there's a lot of factors that went into that on the weekend. Didn't make it very enjoyable, obviously, but it's more than just 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll agree with everything you're saying there. It was a hard game to tear apart, really, because, as you said, we're missing 3/4 of our spine. You didn't even touch on Dane Laurie played 6 for the first time in an NRL game. He's never played 6 before. Excuses aside, like it sucks to lose by that amount. But yeah, watching the highlights tonight, you really saw the tries they scored, and as you said, luck was absolutely on their side. Everything just seemed to go their way. So if you take luck out of it, maybe we lose 54-0, 62-0, something like that. There were a few passes that I didn't like. Maybe that's just the Tiger coming out of me. Again, that sort of stuff. You don't expect in those games to go up and beat them. They weren't going to let us beat them, but you don't expect to walk away with a record score against you. And then the narrative comes out. You imagine talking about that. We lose 58-0, for example, and then the Bulldogs go and do what they do on Sunday. Are we talking about us on Monday? Absolutely not.
We look at the Dragons. What was the Dragons score? 58-12 or something?
58-12 or something like that. Like,
yeah,
you're talking about those sort of. The Dragons are going into that game with their full strength side, effectively, like the best side they can field on the park. We've lost so many players in terms of injury and stuff like that.
And key position players too.
Absolutely.
The other thought I had a day or two ago post-game, like Sunday or yesterday, was if you take that same Cowboys side and you take their 3 best players out, so say Drinkwater, Dearden and Robson, or Dearden and Townsend, or whoever it might be, they're not even getting within QE of that. They might, and it's all speculation, but 20, 30 points in them at best if we're awful. That game was built entirely, essentially, off Dearden and Drinkwater's just creative whatever. They played brilliant attacking football, those two primarily. Even take those two out, for example. Us without Appy and Brooks, our 2 best players, our 2 most threatening players, probably our 2 most experienced players or close to it, and 2 key position players. It can't be undersold. And I don't know if the commentary in the media so far around what we've been copping, or the lack thereof compared to past games where we've absolutely copped a shellacking, is reflective of the fact that Bulldogs also did, or if people are actually taking in a little bit of consideration that we are where we are and there's a few mitigating factors. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the scoreline is what's blowing it out of proportion, but I feel like the narrative is exactly what you said. Those that know rugby league, okay, there was a lot of factors there as to why the scoreline went the way it did. Um, but yeah, it's concerning in the same, but in the same breath, it's also like, well, it is what it is. Like it's expected considering what we're putting up versus what the Cowboys were putting up. That Cowboys side goes up against the Newcastle side that beat the Bulldogs by 66 points. We know how that's going to go. That the Cowboys going to roll them. They're in form. Players like I saw a meme that said Coach of the Year should go to Billy Slater for the North Queensland Cowboys because he's just bought those guys out of their skin. Like you got Nanai, Cotter, Val Holmes, who got owned by Stafford Toa, and who we were cooing about when we did it, the pod last, saying, how's this guy going to defend against Turbo or Latrell or Stephen Crichton? And the bloke has gone to another level. Like he's just playing out of his skin. So these guys are all in form versus us just trying to hold on, really. And yeah, it's disappointing. The scoreline sucks, and we've acknowledged that. But you also have to look at the outside factors and go, we're not sacking the CEO for that. We're not sacking this guy for that. We're looking at what happened and going, well, we got shellacked by a good team. We would have hoped the score was less, but it wasn't. So what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And you got to have a look as well about how they scored their points. There's a lot of second phase stuff and a lot of stuff on the edges like we spoke about. And our strength is our forward pack, and the area that we don't have many injuries in many ways is our forward pack as well. And they didn't come through the centre of us. They made a few metres, and that's to be expected. We are missing, like we said, one of our tempo leaders in defence, being Appy, and a lot of them, he throws a lot of the boys on his back and does that. And then you add to that the fact that a few of the boys had a few poor games, but they did not just simply own us through the middle, scoring crash ball tries next to the post and stuff like that. So
yeah, exactly right. Like you saw watching the highlights tonight, to reevaluate this again. A lot of tackles that a lot of desperate tackles that just slipped off. Naden in a couple of times went like full on for a desperate round the legs tackle, and he just slipped, and it's just. It's just those sorts of things that just weren't going our way. And we sound like we're making excuses. We understand we lost 74-0, but we don't think that this is an excuse to burn the club to the ground yet. Anyway, we'll wait to play the Sharks this week.
There's been plenty of times like that. There's been plenty of excuses in the past to burn the club to the ground. So this won't.
Yeah,
if those won't break us, this won't. And if you think we are being apologists for the performance on the weekend, you try getting on here and doing a podcast following that performance. That's
try filling it.
That's it. That takes heart. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Any sort of fight, mate? Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, if you were to put those two team lists together and you'd show the Cowboys team, we'll move aside from that. But go to our 1-6-7. You've got Buller, a rookie fullback playing out of his skin, but a rookie in its sense. You've got at 6, Laurie, never played 5/8 before in a professional NRL game. Yeah. Then you got 7, Brandon Wakeham, who will move on from pretty quickly. And then Jake Simpkin, again, that's not our first choice dummy half. It was only ever going to go one way. It just went a lot worse one way than that's the thing.
Exactly. So, and if you look at how they had been playing prior to that, I mean, probably not the last month, but that rich vein of form before we lost Brooks and Appy, and you look at that squad, particularly those names that you mentioned, most of which, bar Jake, who is on the bench, and Laurie, who obviously wasn't in the side, the squad had been overachieving in many ways. The fact they knocked off Panthers and what they did to the Cowboys, you look at the squad on paper, name for name, last time they did that, and they put a cricket score on. So, yeah, the capabilities are there in that squad, and many of these players have shown that they have what it takes. It's just about that building, and it's about that building over time. And you're going to have these issues. Gus Gould, who I guess we hate half the things he says, but occasionally he's got a fair few nuggets of wisdom. And he was speaking on 100% footy last night. I think he was talking particularly about the dog situation and the salary cap situation, and he articulated it really well. And I'm not going to. I'm going to briefly try to paraphrase what he said, but I encourage anybody who's interested or their ears are pricked up by what I'm saying to actually go back and watch it. It's on YouTube. They upload the snippets there. I think it's about an 8 or 9 minute video. Essentially, he was talking about struggling clubs digging their way out of the doldrums. And he said you got two options, and this is something that people have spoken about. It's not news, but he articulated it really well. And essentially, he's talking about the boards or the administrators of these clubs that are struggling at the time. They understand that there's a pressure build there. So there's pressure from the fans, there's pressure from the media, that sort of stuff as well. And it only grows over time. That's not news to anybody. And so, in order to try to alleviate that pressure a little bit, the temptation is often too strong for teams to go out and try to overpay certain players, to pull them in to maybe climb 2 or 3 spots up the ladder. Maybe it jags them an extra win or 2 or 3 over a season, but there's no long-term plan along that sort of lines. I didn't see this in particular, but I have heard that he alluded to the fact that the Tigers are actually 3 to 4 years ahead of the Dogs in terms of their junior pathways, and actually spoke positively about the way that we are heading on that similar vein to what Penrith were doing. And he said, this is part of the process, because one of the first things you have to try to do is to try to get the salary cap in order. And in order to do that, you have to paper over cracks with people that perhaps aren't ready, or a weaker squad can be exposed, particularly if you have key injuries. They've had a shitload of injuries through their forwards. We've had a shitload of injuries in more recent times to key positional players. These squads are skinny because that is the process of building them from the ground up. You've got to bring players in, but you've got to build these people up. And it takes time, as he said, and the meme was always the Penrith 5-year plan. But you look at them now, untouchable. And they're not going anywhere anytime soon. That system as a club, and they've just now got their production line coming through. They won't win the comp every year, but they're going to be there or thereabouts. It's hard to envision Penrith missing the 8 anytime in the next decade, and we're not asking for that necessarily, but I guess this is more a symptom of what he was talking about in that segment last night. And I'll probably wrap it up here because I do want people to go and have a bit of a listen to it. But he just put it really well and explained it really well, and it doesn't make the losing any easier. But we know for a fact that the pathway system at our club has been heavily invested now for about 2.5 years. It's going to take longer. We've seen Talon make his debut. We've seen Jahream Buller come in. We've got young Artasi James at 22 here. Buller and Artasi James aren't the juniors that they're talking about when they talk about this next crop coming through. And people even look at something like Jersey Flegg and becoming second last in Jersey Flegg. There's reasons for that. They're talking about the SG Ball kids. They're talking about the Harold Matts kids. And the problem with something like Flegg, for example, is that all our best juniors are getting pulled out of Flegg to play up New South Wales Cup, or even play a game or two in NRL with a couple of the debuts we've seen, because we're trying to get these guys fast-tracked in because we are struggling. We want to get them up to that level so quick. We could keep our best players down in Flegg and be up in the top 4. The likes of Falidi, who's been playing New South Wales Cup, the likes of Talon De Silva, who's now playing NRL, and these other guys who they're sort of holding back a bit from Flegg. So they're holding him back in SG Ball. So, look, it's part of the process, and there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than just, I guess, the Weekend Warrior fan might think. A shitload more. And, go and watch. If you haven't watched that segment, hop on YouTube, 100% Footy. Gus talks about it yesterday. They upload a series of segments. It's worth having a listen to anyway. He sort of lays it out really well. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, fantastic. I love Gus, and I agree with a lot of what he says in regards to that. And it's what you can see with what we're building and what's coming through. And yeah, you've got to be smart with who you're spending your money on, and you've also got to, there will be a $700,000 player that we could get for $950,000, but we don't want to pay that because we realise that we could invest that money elsewhere. But in the meantime, we're suffering losses like we are, and the fans are getting restless. The fans are getting angry. the fans are threatening to cancel their memberships, burn their jerseys, kill Pasco, do all that sort of shit. Whereas it's going to take time to rebuild this club. And we understand we're in the Carlton situation. We're on about our fourth rebuild, but this one is one that's actually got focus. This one has got plans behind it. And this one is where money's being spent where it has to be spent. And we can build a core group of players that can take this club further. Losses on the weekend, like they were, really just start to put that negative attitude out, where if we can just focus on what's coming, things are going to get better.
Yeah.
Like that's the best way. Yeah. And he's right about when.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say about it?
I was going to say
he we just did it. Little dance right there. What he was saying in regards to the Dogs being so much further behind than what we were is because their junior system for so many years has been fucked. And he's in there trying to fix that. He's trying to build these players through to build another Penrith, to build another, Sydney club that's building these amazing juniors. And it's great that he's acknowledged what we've got, especially what's coming through from Campbelltown, all that. There's these amazing players coming through that we're going to just, guide through to our system, and we can use them as we want. So things are looking up in that retrospect.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to see the forest for the trees in those situations. So I'm actually surprised we've seen more green shoots this year than what I anticipated. And the defensive statistical improvement that I spoke about earlier, that's just one of them. The likes of Buller and TDS coming through is more.
Yeah.
The likes of Steph making Origin. These are all little things that we weren't anticipated to do a whole lot this year. We've got the key injuries that I've spoken about, and we're looking, and they've always spoken about building for 2025 and beyond once Benji takes over. These were always going to be gardening years, and everybody, I guess, in the off seasons can sit there and go, "Oh yeah, no worries, we'll sit tight, we'll be patient. Yeah, we understand it's a long process." But then when the season rolls around, you get your jersey on, you crack a couple of beers, and you sit down to watch your football team. You forget that we've got a couple of years of gardening to do to get to where we want to as a club and as a system, as a franchise. And you just want to see your team win on the weekend, and you become about the now. And that's quite a hard mindset to shift. And you and I, Toby, everyone out there, we were as guilty of it as anybody. We don't get any less aggro with our current predicament, no doubt. But people can choose to focus on the now if they wish. I won't, because it's pretty fucking miserable. So I'm going to focus on what the plan seems to be and the evidence that I can see that plan is. And then here's the evidence. The evidence is we've invested more than we've ever invested in junior development. We've got sides in Harold Matt's SG Ball League, obviously, and Andrew Johns Cup, which is a sister competition to Harold Matt's down in New South Wales. We've got the Cubs program that runs and does tours and certain games and programs, which is separate to that system as well. So that's an entirely separate junior development program. In the Andrew Johns Cup, we've got the Macarthur West Tigers side, which my understanding is the under-15 side. They just recently played a touring side from Tonga and absolutely shellacked them. The Macarthur West Tigers side made the semis, is my understanding, missed out on the grand final just. Harold Matt's side last year for Wests won the grand final for the first time in Western Suburbs history. This year, a lot of those boys moved up to SG Ball for their first year of SG Ball. I think we were competitive in SG Ball. We had a lot of guys playing young. We actually had a lot of those Harold Matts guys from last year play up in Flegg as well, playing 2 grades up. That's the likes of Talon De Silva and whatnot. And we even have some of those guys making New South Wales Cup debuts as well. We have the centre of excellence. It's where it needs to be. The best facilities on the east coast of Australia for rugby league, for any sport for that matter. We've got our salary cap in the best shape it's ever been in the history. The club is making money, one of the few clubs that actually makes money. But we're not winning football games. And it's all that other stuff that people don't see. And I understand that. That is 95% of what following a football side is the game on the weekend. But the other stuff matters, and the other stuff will pay dividends. I'd place my house on the fact that I don't know, timeframes, maybe 5 years, 5, 10 years, we're regularly in the finals. The 10 years is a long time away, but those systems will be where the Panthers systems are from when they first started. And if you go back to early Panthers days, and we're not Penrith, we'll tread our own path. But what does come from this is success. Success might not be back-to-back premierships, or it might not be 5 crowns in 7 years or anything crazy. But what it looks like is regular finals appearances. It looks like a more competitive side. It looks like people wanting to come to the club. And it's a matter of just figuring out when that corner is that we turn. And every time we think we're turning the corner, it's just another stretch of the maze. But we're getting closer. 74 blot on the weekend doesn't indicate that. I guarantee we are getting closer. When they talk patience from the club, it's almost like a slap in the face. We want to win now in the meantime. So considering all those systems are in place, let's hope that we can use some of the coin that we can to also now focus on how we can win now, because that actually does matter too. And that's going to simply come from signings and what they can do in the player market. And I guess that's why they bought Fulton in too.
Yeah.
So
no, absolutely. Yeah.
Quick,
no,
very quick.
It's all. Sorry, mate.
Very, very quick segue, just talking about current signings. We'll talk about the Sharkies game, and then we might wrap things up for this evening, mate, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
The big name on everybody's lips in Tiger Land at the moment are the Fainu brothers out of Manly. So Manasi, Samuela, Sione, and Latu. Not quite in that order. Sione is older than Samuela. Now, we've got Sione at the club. We signed him mid last year. He's been playing New South Wales Cup. He actually started on the weekend for the first time, was my understanding, New South Wales Cup. He played in the trial match for us. We didn't mind what he saw. Good hands. He's been going relatively well in New South Wales Cup. Hasn't had a look in at first yet, but Latu Fainu I've described as probably the best 18-year-old in the country. And if Talon De Silva is the best hooker in the country, Latu would be the best 5'8". Ethan Sanders out of Parramatta would most likely be the best halfback in the country. He is a generational signing. He is, as much as you can tell what somebody is like at the age of 17, 18, he is a spectacular prospect. I can't understate that. Most likely a better prospect than what Talon De Silva is at hooker. Everything we've seen from Buller, expect Latu Fainu to eclipse it tenfold. I don't know when. Now, we haven't signed him, but he and his brother Samuela are both in heavy talks with Mario Tartak, who's their manager, and Benji and Fulton. They had dinner last week. They were snapped doing that. And there's a few whispers around from multiple sources, but nothing credible that they have signed or they are coming. Now, we know the way that this plays out with West Tigers, and we can all hope and pray that's the case. These boys are not the saviours, but they are. Samuela is the second rower in the Olakau'atu mould. We've seen him play a few games for Manly. But, however, they are downright damn good players, and they would form a gigantic part of a rebuild, or of the current rebuild that we're doing in terms of assembling high-quality players in key positions moving forward, particularly because Latu is a 5'8", a half specifically, like in the halves, but specifically a 5'8". So, look, what I have seen is a few things being shared with some feedback from family members, Chinese whispers, that they're coming to the Tigers. They've decided they are signing. I've seen some family members of the Fainus make some comments on Manly pages about thanking everything that Manly had done over the years for the boys, and they'll always hold a special place in their heart, indicating they're leaving Manly. Now, whether or not that's to us, it's just as likely to see the Dragons or the Dolphins or the Titans or fucking Western Reds swoop in and steal them off us. But we can hope. And in terms of the signing news, those two would be a gigantic acquisition for us. I mean huge. Mate, do you know much about those boys? Have you heard much or
watched what was the older brother's name?
Sione?
I don't know. Sione. So I watched him play for Manly.
Manly, that would be Samuela.
Sorry.
Sione is the one with us.
Well, Sione's one with us, but Samuela. So he could potentially be coming over as well.
Yeah, they're looking at both the boys, Latu and Samuela.
Yeah, fantastic aggression and everything like that. In regards to Latu, that's right.
Latu, yeah.
No,
yeah,
Latu. So, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I followed the Punters and Dribblers Instagram page. So the Hello Sport Boys, and they had their rugby league guru on, the man that knows everything, and they were talking to him about prospects, and he said, "I've watched Latu play, and this kid has got it." And they were like, those boys are both Manly, very excited, and said, you know, how far are we talking? And he said, "Oh, look, everything is in with this kid's grasp. He is the way he sees the game, the way he plays his game. He has got it." Within 3 weeks, they're talking that Manly are moving on from him due to his giant contract, and we're about to sign him. And the Hello Sport Boys made no secret that they were devastated about what was coming. But it is what it
what
is.
was coming with Brooks? You're talking about?
Well, they didn't know about that. They
you saw that segment though, didn't you?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was I felt bad, man. Like, I love the bloke, and I'm so glad that he's going to go to a club and get a fresh start and do something and learn from DCE, because he's currently the best halfback in the game, and he'll play 6 outside him. But the way they carried on was pretty grim. But in terms of letting Finu come to us, like, this is massive. If this comes off for us, the only other club that's in the fold is the Gold Coast, and that seems to be based on the Des Hasler factor. I don't see them making a play for him. They've got so many halves prospects, and listening to anyone that knows the Gold Coast system and what players they've got coming out of their schools and stuff, the best years for the Gold Coast are yet to come. They've got a lot of great players coming. They're not going to pin it on, one of Desi's boys from back in the day, considering they've got 14 million halfbacks for some reason. So, yeah, I'm very excited for this to be something that, you just get that Benji vibe about it, don't you? Like this young kid who, he would be excited the fact that he's going to play under Benji, and that's going to be his coach and everything like that. So that would be a really big factor to him coming. His brother's already there. His other brother might be coming. Fulton's already our recruitment manager. It looks great. It could be
from Western Sydney, very family oriented.
Yeah.
So
that's Guildford is the name of the suburb. Yeah, not really familiar with it, but yeah, there's lots of things there. On the flip side, it also builds for our biggest letdown of the year, 74-0 out the door. If this kid walks and goes somewhere else, he's obviously not re-signing with Manly. That would be absolutely devastating in terms of we really need this as a club. We need to have. We've lost Brooks, and look, that was sort of we gave him what we thought was market value for him. He's gotten a little bit more at Manly. He needs a sea change. We understand that. There's no decent halves. There's good halfbacks on the market, but there's no great halfbacks on the market at the moment that we can get. We need to start building. And so this kid could be the big thing. He knows he's going to play first grade. He comes to us. Even if he goes to the Gold Coast, which, again, I'm saying is his most obvious target other than staying at Manly, he's got to sit behind Hunt. He's got to sit behind Foran, and then he'll get his chance. He comes to us next year. He's starting. He's our 5'8". He's our halfback. So yeah, it's exciting times ahead if we can nail him, and I think we will. I'm very sure we will.
Yeah, big time. Fingers crossed. It seems on paper that we're a great chance, but we have in the past as well, and we see a lot of these fall through our fingers. But all we can do is hope, and he will just be a small piece of the puzzle, as will his brother, if we are lucky enough to get their signatures, and we can hope that they are. Yeah, the one thing you mentioned, the Gold Coast, that I don't know whether it concerns me, but the fact that they've just released Toby Sexton, who is one of their backup halves, to the Dogs effective immediately. He was actually playing for the Dogs this weekend in first grade.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder if something is incoming, and if something is incoming, is that what's going to be a Ben Hunt, you would assume. And if he's for 2 years, then you've got Kieran Foran. If Desi's coming, Foran will keep rolling 12 months on 12 months for a little while. And then they've also got Tanner Boyd there. So, yeah, it's just when you see possible suitors start shedding halves, does it become a bit of a concern? But obviously it's likely that Ben Hunt's going to land there. So, look, we might just leave it. Save if we've jinxed it, we've probably already jinxed us. But fingers crossed. We'll see how we go, and maybe next week's pod will have a bit more of an answer.
We just lost 74-0. What more can we say? What more can happen? It's
Uh,
all sort of.
we keep saying that,
before,
don't we?
yeah, absolutely. Before we do the preview, I'm just going to go to the loo. I'll be back.
Too easy,
And
mate. No worries. That's all right. I'll go through the lineup while you're there. So at fullback, we've got Jareem Buller against the Sharks on the weekend. Asu Kapoa is in on the wing for Nofaluma, who is out injured with a shoulder injury. Stafford Toa, Tommy Talea comes in for Naden, same problem. Shoulder injury himself as well. Junior Tupou is on the other wing. The halves are the same with Dane Laurie and Brendan Wakeham teaming up again in the middle together. Excuse me. Not in the middle, sorry, but in the halves, I should say. Steph, Utoka Manu, David Clemmer are the props with Jake Simpkins still at lock waiting for Appy to return. Papali'i and Bateman now returns to an edge after a stint in lock. Obviously, that experiment hasn't worked too well. We've got Fanua Pole returns to lock, giving us that little bit more punch through the middle, in my opinion. TDS, Talon De Silva, young man, retains his spot at 14 on the bench. We've got Sean Bloor and Seyfarth on the bench as the rotations. Sean Bloor being obviously the second row rotation, Seyfarth as a prop or versatile. And we've got Atasi James in for a debut in number 17, who is a short minute impact rampaging prop, who has been known to have the odd lateral defensive deficiency in the past, but fingers crossed he will play well. The reserves here, we have Matamua, Will Smith, Tristan Riley, Brandon Tumeth and Josh Falidi, young centre of ours, who is 19 years of age, playing in the Origin, actually under 19s State of Origin for the Blues in the upcoming game, which is exciting. He's named in number 22. That my understanding is Josh Falidi has not been named in the squad before this week, so that's exciting for him. Big week for the young man, and he's another one in the centres, which is a position of interest for us that we've got earmarked. So exciting. As much as he won't be playing, obviously, from number 22, young Falidi, he gets a run in the squad this week. Mate, I just went through the team list, and obviously a fair few changes this week, couple forced with injury, a couple of rotations there. So Kapoa in for Noffa with a shoulder injury. We've got Tommy Talau, which is disgusting, in for Brent Naden. It's probably horrible for horrible there, I guess, based on the last game. Forward pack is essentially the same, but we've got the Bateman to lock experiment over. He's back on an edge to lock that up. Fingers crossed. Pole back in the centre for a bit more centre punch. And we've got Atasi James coming in, number 17, on the bench for a debut, which is exciting again. Love seeing a few debuts from a few up-and-comers, mate. What do you make of the team this week?
Oh, look, it's pretty much the best of what we've got to offer, really, isn't it, at the moment? Fortunate to go up against the Sharks, who are a top 4 team, and do not have one player out from Origin. Like, that's another testament to our lovely Freddie and what he likes to do. So, given what we've got, we're presenting the best side we can possibly field on paper. But I mean, the Tommy Talau factor, his defense in the last few weeks has been absolutely atrocious. So that concerns me. That halves pairing was just woeful against the Cowboys. But again, they didn't really get any chance. The forward pack looks great. That's one really positive. And De Silva off the bench to keep his progression going. But you don't know how much these losses, you've just got to, and I'm saying loss already, we haven't even played the game, but you can predict this is going to go one way based on the side we're fielding. These losses aren't going to do great for his confidence. I mean, there's no one really there that you can say doesn't deserve their spot based on the current situation we're in. But yeah, it's not great. I really feel Kapoa is one of those players where I just don't get what he's being used for at the moment. So we started him at the second row. We've moved him to a bench rotation. He's come into centre. Now he's playing wing. Surely we could put him in to centre for Talau and play another. Surely we've got another winger in the top 30 that can fill that spot. Surely we do.
Yeah, well, the other names there, obviously, that are in the extended list are Tristan Riley and Josh Falidi. So I'm not 100% sure if Felitti has played New South Wales Cup. I think he was due to make his New South Wales Cup debut, possibly. Might have played a game or two, or he's definitely been playing Flegg, and he's playing up a grade in Flegg. Flegg being under 21, so he's 19.
Yeah,
And Tristan Riley, who's been, look, I haven't got great raps on Tristan Riley, but what I will say is he is slippery and has scored a fair few tries this year. I haven't seen enough of him to see whether or not his defense has improved from last year, because it was abhorrent to last year. But look, there's some centre options. So, yeah, the fact they've picked Tommy Talau, who's been confirmed to Manly for next year, is surprising for mine. I know
yeah,
that's not your Asu Kapala question, but we're also missing 3 wing options. Naden played wing last year. We've got Nofaluma out, and Charlie Staines is still returning from a perforated bow. So, look,
yeah,
yeah, to your point, it's probably the best that we can field in some ways. And that sucks for Kapoa, because we were all waxing lyrical about the start of the year, how well he started in probably the
yeah,
first 2 months of football. And I think that's because he understood his role. And he's, unfortunately, I think under Sheen's become a victim of his versatility. And now he's a bit of that, doesn't know where he fits. It's that Moses Mbai conundrum, and you
yeah,
you very rarely find a player who excels in those situations. You look at
yeah,
someone like Connor Watson, or the only one that I can really think of, there's 2 I can think of, and they both came out of the Melbourne system, who didn't nail down a spot but still excelled in that utility, was Nico Hines, who then ultra excelled when he was given a spot to focus at the Sharkies in halfback. The other one was Pappenhausen, who played at 14 for quite a while and filled in a bunch of different positions. And when he finally nailed down fullback, he set the world alight. But outside of that, these utility style players, they find that job hard, I think, to be the Mr. Fix It.
yeah, yeah. And you see that, especially with Peachy, and how when he got picked up for Origin in 2018, everyone thought this is the perfect number 14, and he'll play Origin however long he wants to. And then, sure enough, Penrith couldn't find a role for him, so he moves to the Gold Coast. He can't find a role there. Then he comes to us. He can't find a role. He's back to Penrith. He's centre. His name since the 2018 series has never been thrown up for Origin again. Like it's a there was one player for my mind that used to nail it down, but I don't think he was necessarily that role, was Craig Wing. He was always a half hooker, but for some reason he could play that utility role better than anybody out of at an Origin level. But yeah, this whole person that can fill all positions, it's not the be all and end all. Yeah, so it's unfortunate for him, for Kapoa, as we're talking about, in terms of the fact that he has been shifted so much. The promise in the second row seemed to be gone within the first month, and he was back in the centres, and he moved to wing, and he tries his guts out, but he just, it's a victim, as you said, of his own versatility. He's the Kurt Gidley of the West Tigers, really. I was chatting to someone today. Remember when Gidley played for Australia and they put him in the front row? That was great.
Yeah, I know.
Playing,
At least he can say he did it, though.
Yeah, and he got smashed. But yeah, it's an unfortunate situation he finds himself in. But on reflection, it is the best 17 we can currently field.
Yeah, I agree. The bench, I guess, in some ways looks a little bit more traditional now, which is good. They don't have that sort of dual utility player. They've got the substitute hooker, and then they've got 2 props and a second rower who can play middle too.
Yeah.
So a bit more traditional. I think that's much better suited. There's some big enough bodies on there. I know that Seafar is very uninspiring a name to see, but he, particularly this year, he's come in and for little bit part roles and he's done his job. He hasn't given away penalties. He hasn't made silly errors. He's made his tackles. He's an effort player. So we said last year that as long as he's doing that in the 30, more power to you. Keep doing it. I don't know about carrying a second row on the bench. I don't know about Bloor unless he's going to play some middle. But obviously, Tarsi James as well, he's a high impact middle, which will be exciting to see. He'll go one or two ways. Either he'll be sort of Marty Tapau, James Gavay 2014 Mark II, or it'll just be a flop. But we'll see how we go.
Yeah,
it creates some interest, mate. How are you seeing the game? How are you seeing the game going there on Thursday night? Because it's creeping up on us pretty quick.
Yep. Do I have money on it, or do I not have money on it? That's the question.
No, you're just giving your honest review. No,
the Sharks are they're a really good side, and we're playing a full strength Sharks team, bar one or two players. I can't see us getting within 30 of them. They've got a lot of points. I hope to see some defensive grunt this week. It is a home game for us, but we're playing at CommBank, which is in our home stadium. So, yeah, look, Sharks 30, Tigers 10. That's my final prediction. And I feel bad because I don't want to turn my back on them, but after, what we've got to offer in terms of the players we've got on the field, we can't compete with them at the moment. Like they're a really good side. They've got some great players, and they've got a halfback with a point to prove, and rightfully so, based on how he's been treated at Origin level. I can see them giving us a little bit of a toweling. But I just want to see some improvement from last week, really. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what most people would be anticipating, just find your shoulders and start there.
Yeah, exactly.
And look, you just take one look at that back line of ours, and bar probably Buller, despite the fact he's a 7-game rookie, our entire back line, and maybe Stafford Toa, is reserve grade. Asu Kapoa, Tommy Talau, Junior Tupou at the moment, particularly in these last few games, Dane Laurie and Brandon Waken, they're reserve grade players. That could be the lineup, and I think something close to that probably has been rolled out for the Maggies in the last 12 months. I would say all of those players to some degree, including Stafford Toa and Jareen Buller. So, look, it's the forwards are a different situation. Obviously, the forward pack for ours, missing Appy, but he's world class. And the backs are reserve grade. It's funny because as I'm reading it on my phone on the NRL page, it's got the backs and a line dividing in the forwards. You could not have more of a chalk and cheese of the two. So, I think you're right, mate. They've got too much class. They've got more class in the halves, or at the very least, Nicho Hynes. Will Kennedy at the back is a classy fullback. He's a high percentage fullback. He's dangerous, and he executes quite well. I actually see their edges as being a big strength for the Sharks.
Massively.
Britton Okora's whole running is second to none. He's in career best form. Teague Wilton's growing from strength to strength, actually surprising me. I think we've probably got them in the front row. Kafusi and Rudolph, I don't see them as overly threatening. They're not walkovers. Blake Brayley's a good player in dummy half, so we could definitely match it with them in the forwards, no doubt about that. We've probably even got the edge of them, you could argue, in some ways. But, that back line and those halves of theirs, they're going to be hard to beat. I got us at 42-14. I'm just going to, like you said, I just think they're going to go on sections of the game where they bleed 2 or 3 tries in quick succession. I don't think we have the capacity. Still, we don't have those momentum stoppers in our team at the moment. They need to be in the back line, particularly in the halves, and we don't have them. So if they get a roll on in the game, then that's what's going to happen. Best we can hope for is that they play a little bit down. But look, they find their shoulders and we're competitive. We're trying to look ahead as hard as it can be at times, though.
How many weeks till we get Appy back? That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, we're all counting down. I'm counting down to minutes. It's like 2,463 minutes or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
mate.
Absolutely.
Any final thoughts before we go through the PSAs, mate?
Look, we hope for the best, expect the worst. That's pretty much what a Tigers fan does now. I don't think we need to snag it 2 or 3 more wins before the end of the season. And I don't see this season being a failure based on what we've been dealt in terms of injuries and stuff like that.
On that, how many wins then? So we're currently on 3. How many wins would you go? Considering not from the start of the year, but considering that start particularly.
Yeah, I'd say 7. I'd say 7 wins. And I think that keeps us off the bottom of the ladder. So once we hit that Cowboys game, we all started thinking big, and I thought, finals are not out of reach. Especially at the closeness of this comp, the bye points, all that sort of jazz, we have it in us to play finals based on that one game alone. Since then, I just don't think that's plausible. And I think, given the way the ladder is, we'd probably have to win every one of our games to do it anyway. We need to just be focusing on the future, focusing on building this side, but we also need to get our asses off the bottom of that ladder. And we've got sides around us, the Dragons and the Bulldogs, who we can easily just plonk back in there and keep them in there. So we need a couple of wins. I don't think it's coming this week. And unfortunately, we've got my most hated team to play, the Newcastle Knights, the next week, who I can't stand because
they're a bogey side for us too.
they are, and in a way, they're in a similar vein to us. You know, they're the perennial strugglers. They're trying to get off the bottom of the ladder. But yeah, I hate playing them, and they'll probably give us a bit of a serve based on the side we're serving up against Cronulla. So yeah, hopefully the goal is to just keep off the bottom of that ladder, build these young fellas up, and just focus on 2025 because 2024. Sorry, I've jumped a year already. Fuck, I've jinxed us already for next year. But 2024, you know, I turned 40. Let's play finals. 40 finals.
All right, I'm calling it now. That'll be it.
Yeah.
Be, and your 40s will be a decade of dominance. Creeping into 8th at least.
Absolutely, that's it. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Right.
That's all.
All right. We might wrap it up there. Before we wrap up the show completely, as we say every single week, hop on the Facebook page, Tiger Town Podcast, YouTube channel, throw a comment on there. Still getting the DMs on both those outlets, both those platforms. Love the feedback, guys. Keep it up. It's good stuff. Toby, hopefully back next week as well. We're going to get Todd back as often as we can. Love having you on the show, man. Thanks so much. The other podcast we say every single week as well, West Life Podcast, give those boys a listen, and West Tigers Podcast. Those two podcasts don't like each other, but we like all of them. They do the job better than us. We say it every single week. Get over there. Don't forget to tell them who sent you. Mate, thanks again for jumping in. I really appreciate it. You carried the show, if I'm being honest.
Oh, thanks, mate. No, it was good fun. I love coming on and chatting the footy with you boys. And yeah, we got to. It was a depressing show at the start, but we focused on the positives. Really, you know, we won't talk about New South Wales anymore. We're done with that. In one more week, we don't have to hear about it anymore for another year. So yeah, let's just
look at us.
That. But,
we've somehow got smiles on our faces at the end of the show. I don't know how that's happened, but here we are.
Here we are. That's why.
That doesn't hurt. Mate, we say the same thing every single week. We finish with the show. Go the Mighty West Tigers.
Go the Mighty West Tigers. We can do it. And the Blues, hopefully.
Go the Blues.
Go the Blues.